Today, we're going to be talking about inequalities and how to represent them visually on a number line. First, I want us to quickly review our inequality symbols. Greater than, greater than or equal to, less than, less than or equal to. For the greater than symbol, I want you to notice how there looks like a mouth that's pointing outwards to the left, and how there's a nose tip over here that's pointing outwards to the right. Similarly, with the less than symbol, it's the exact opposite. The nose tip is pointing to the left direction, and the mouth is pointing outwards to the right direction. And I want you to keep these things in mind as we're trying to represent our inequality visually on a number line later. Let's try to solve our inequality before trying to represent it visually on the number line. If you remember how we solved inequalities, we treat it the same way as we would solve an equation. So here we have f plus 9 is less than or equal to 10. Remember how we solved equations and inequalities? We try to do the opposite operations that we're doing to the variable. In this case, we're adding 9 to f. What's the opposite of adding 9? Well, it's subtracting by 9. But you must remember that we do it to both sides of our inequality. And then we're left with f is less than or equal to 10 minus 9 is 1. So we're going to start at 1 on the number line. You might notice that you can choose between a filled in circle or an open circle that's not filled in. In short, whenever you see an inequality symbol with the horizontal line at the bottom, which we read is equal to, we fill it in. So in this case, because our inequality symbol, we had f is less than or equal to 1, because there's a horizontal line here, we fill it in. So remember we talked about the nose and the mouth? Well, if you pay attention to the nose tip of the inequality, you'll notice that it's pointing outwards to the left direction. Well, that's the direction that you fill in on the number line. Let's try another problem. Notice how the variable is on the right hand side of the inequality now. Remember we talked about the mouth and the tip? Notice how the mouth is pointing at the 3, and the nose tip is pointing at the side with the variable to the right. We can rewrite the same inequality in a different way. What I mean by that, I'll show you. Notice how instead of the greater than or equal to symbol in the original inequality, I flipped it both sides, the t divided by 2 and the 3, and I used the less than and equal to symbol. Notice how the mouth is still pointing at the 3 and the nose tip is pointing at the side with the variable. They are the same, and I can do this as long as the mouth and the nose tip is pointing to the same thing as the original inequality. Let's try another one. Notice how the mouth is pointing to the right side with the J, and how the nose is pointing to the left to the 4. Well, we can rewrite this inequality as long as the mouth and nose are still pointing to the same thing in our original inequality. Notice how the mouth is still pointing to the side with the variable j here, and the nose is still pointing at the 4. So now we're working with j divided by negative 2 is greater than 4. What are we doing to the variable? Well, we're dividing by negative 2. What's the opposite of dividing by negative 2? Well, it's multiplying by negative 2. And so we'll be left with j. Now you have to be careful. Whenever you're multiplying or dividing negative numbers, the inequality sign changes. So instead of greater than, it would be less than, because we're dividing by negative numbers. Because we're deal because we're because we're multiplying or dividing because we're multiplying by negative numbers on both sides. So we're left with j is less than 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. So we're left with j is less than negative 8. Remember the nose tip? Which direction is it pointing? Well, it's pointing to the left. And I'm going to leave an open circle because notice how we don't have a horizontal line in our inequality symbol. So I'll leave it open. And the nose tells me I'm pointing to the left side of the inequality.